You're listening to the Hawgs Sports Network Daily Podcast. Now, here's your host, Matt Jones.
Happy Thursday to you. Appreciate you being with us. Matt Jones with Christina Long here in our Fayetteville studio. Lots to get to today. You know, it's been over 2 months since an official sporting event for the Razorbacks. That ends tonight. The soccer team, they'll play playing JBU at Razorback Field. It's a 7 o'clock. What do you call it, a first touch in soccer? I think, isn't that right?
I don't know.
I can't see if Anthony's nodding his head or not. He may
Anthony's
be he may be appalled by how massacring soccer terms here. 7 o'clock start time between Arkansas and JBU tonight. It's always fun for us just when the season gets started. You know, everybody counts down to football, but we cover everything. And so you got soccer, you got volleyball coming up here in a couple of weeks, and then you get football, cross country even starting up here pretty soon. It's always more fun for us whenever there are sporting events going on. It makes work easier. It makes the days go by faster, I feel like. So we're looking forward to that. You can read a preview of the soccer game, by the way, at Whole Hog Sports this morning, our website, wholehogsports.com. Anthony Kristensen's got a nice preview there of Arkansas JBU. We're going to talk a lot of football here with Christina right now. Travis Williams, the Razorbacks defensive coordinator, he spoke yesterday after the Razorbacks went through their latest workout. We had Bobby Petrino the day before that. You only hear from the coordinators one time during the preseason. Typically, you only hear from the coordinators 2 times during the year.
They're actually giving us them next week. It's
okay.
a first. It's a shocking twist. We'll get them. So we will hear from Petrino and Williams one more time.
I stand corrected, but that's a change this year from years past.
Yes, it is. And then we won't get them at all for the rest of the season. So
used to you would get the coordinators almost too much. You would talk to them weekly. There were even times that I can remember where you would talk to coordinators multiple times during the week, and each coach sets how he wants to handle his media responsibilities. And with Sam Pittman, it's basically been you talk to the assistant coaches during the spring one time, and until this year where the coordinators will speak 2 times, it was you talk to the assistant coaches one time during the preseason. So with that being said, Christina, what did Travis Williams say yesterday that stood out to you?
Yeah, we talked with Travis Williams a lot about the linebackers yesterday because that's kind of his specific group too, as well as just being the overall defensive coordinator. So we talked a lot about the linebackers. And one thing that I wrote about yesterday is when we started going to spring practices months ago, linebacker was probably the greatest area of concern because of what they lost. I mean, they lost their top 4 snap getters, like the people that played the most at linebacker, most of them to the transfer portal, one that just ran out of eligibility. And the guys behind them, some talent, but not a lot of experience. And, just kind of some questions there. They're young players, not necessarily just, they're older, but they haven't seen the field much. It was, they were freshmen and they were about to be sophomores. And so linebacker was a huge concern, and they kind of got to a place where they felt a little better. They had brought in Xavier Sori from Georgia in the first transfer portal window, and he was a guy that had a little bit more playing experience, a talented guy, and they were looking forward to having him, and they have him in spring, and they put him alongside Brad Spence, a returner, a sophomore from last season, and he was the top returning snap getter basically from last year's team. And they put them with the first team defense, and they have a good spring, but there's still a depth concern. They just have 2 more sophomores behind there, and guys that they hope will be good in the future, but they do need some development time. And so they go back to the transfer portal and they get some guys that now in August they're feeling actually pretty confident in the linebacker group, which is not something that I would have foreseen, when we started this preseason process back in March. So it's been interesting to watch. They get a couple guys that bring a lot of versatility. They have a couple guys that are both linebacker, defensive back. They've been playing that kind of nickel spot, and they've been moving some guys around there. And so they have some guys they feel good about. They have more of a true linebacker in Steven Dix from Marshall, who they really like. So they're feeling actually a lot more confident in the linebackers now than they were before, and that's been huge because they needed to shore that up. That was the biggest concern, especially on the defense, because the defense backs and the defense line return some solid players. They have experienced guys from last year's team on a defense that performed, overall okay, right? I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was better than it had been recently. It seemed like it was kind of on the upswing.
It was really good for 2 months, and then it just fell off at the end.
And so, there were some positive signs there, and they get a lot of guys back from that team to try to build on that, except at linebacker. But they're feeling a lot better about linebacker now than they did, and so I'll be interested to see what that looks like when they actually are going against competition.
The defense as a whole what do you think the feel is this year? Because, like offensively, we're finishing up some preseason work yesterday. And so yesterday I wrote a lot about the offense for something that you'll be able to read on our website before too long. But one of the things I mentioned in there is that on offense, there just feels to be like this renewed optimism, right? I mean, the offense is going to be better than it was last year. There's just no question that it's going to be better because it couldn't be a whole lot worse. Defense, what's the feeling?
The sense for me is that they need to not take a step back. And that was something that somebody asked Williams about yesterday was, you did make some improvements last year. I think last year was his first season. Yes. So, you made some improvements, you didn't see tons and tons of drop off. How do you kind of keep making progress? How do you keep from stepping back at all this year? How do you kind of keep this defense on the rise? And I think that's the biggest thing. And I think they have some of the pieces to do that. I think they'll be playing against some really great offenses in their SEC schedule, so we'll see what happens there. But I mean, I do think they have the pieces for that. And he talked about wanting this defense to. It seems like he takes a very aggressive approach to defense, and that's something that we heard the players. They're not necessarily waiting for things to happen. They try not to be reactive, which I think you always try to do. But it's something that's front of mind for them, not being reactive, being proactive, being on the attack all the time on defense, which I think is something that they are really, players themselves are kind of telling us that. So that's something that they have very front of mind. He talked about, I think he said not leaving any meat on the bone, so Travis Williams is I like listening to him talk. He's he's kind of a classic coach, but he's very friendly. He's very personable. He has little turns of phrase like that he likes to use. But, I think the main thing is just how do they keep taking a step forward and not, they would like to have a season where it's not just good for 2 months. They need it to be good for the whole season. And so it'll depend on, it depends on health, things like that. But
as we talk right now, they are scrimmaging over at Razorbacks Stadium. We will talk to Sam Pittman as soon as we get out of here, but by the time you listen to this, we probably will have already spoken to him, and you can read what he has to say on our website at wholehogsports.com. But what I'm really interested to hear is how he evaluates how because he was unhappy last week with how the defense began the practice, and both he and Bobby Petrino were unhappy with how the offense finished the practice. And so that's one of the interesting things I'll be listening for today. Not just that, but they're going to have a lot of players back in their scrimmage today who missed last week with for various reasons, mostly injuries, a lot of concussion protocols. And so it'll be interesting to hear how those players performed today the first time that they're really going through a big time live setting.
Right, yeah. Last week's scrimmage was kind of weird because of the guys that were missing. A lot of guys that they're going to run out there every week were not available, and so. Those guys, sometimes you'll hear from coaches, we know what we have in those guys, guys like a Luke Has. Like, what Luke Has is. He needs to practice and you want to keep getting him better. But as far as a scrimmage, you don't necessarily need, you're not testing him. You're not trying to find out more about him necessarily, or like an Andrew Armstrong or a Tyrone Broden. But as you get closer to the season, you do need to have your full complement of players that you're going to have on Saturdays. You need to be practicing with them in scrimmage settings. So today, hopefully, they get a little bit of a better idea of what this team is as a whole with some of those guys back. Like I said, Luke Has, Andrew Armstrong, Tyrone Broden. We'll see, we're not certain that they're all participating. They should be. We'll find out. So the concussion guys, Anton Junkaj, we talked about the other day. We expect him to be participating today. Lots of guys like that they need to get all these pieces put together.
You're going to be hearing a lot from Sam Pittman soon. By the way, not only is he speaking to us today, he's going to be at the Little Rock Touchdown Club next week. We've got David Bazzel on the show a little bit later. We want to talk to him about the Touchdown Club and the lineup that he's put together. Also get his thoughts on the team, obviously being a former player. Pittman's radio show begins next week, and next week we've got the Hawgs Illustrated Sports Club coming back. Sam Pittman will be our guest speaker August 21st. That's next Wednesday at noon at Home 2 Suites in Springdale. You can reserve your seats now at ozarkstix.com. That's OZARKSTIX.com. Like we said, the program will begin at noon, but you can get there about 20, 30 minutes earlier than that, get you a plate of food, sit down. We'll get you out of there by about 1 o'clock, but we'll have a Q&A session with Sam Pittman there that I always enjoy doing. That's always one of my favorite luncheons that we have each year is when we get the Razorbacks football coach to come there. So ozarkstix.com if you want to go hear Sam Pittman at the Hawgs Illustrated Sports Club next week. we had Ethan in here yesterday and got his thoughts from what Bobby Petrino had to say. Just what stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing obviously is Taylor Green and how, Coach Petrino has talked a lot about how he handpicked Taylor Green out of the transfer portal. Like, that was who he wanted. He knew of him from recruiting him at Missouri State. That's who he wanted. What we've been kind of pressing him about is how do you fix some of the maybe accuracy issues, some of the numbers there. And he has gone back repeatedly to it all starts with, and it sounds basic, but I think it's true. It starts with his fundamentals, like just technique fundamentals. Big thing is footwork. He had an interesting quote about how Taylor Green is 6'6", but sometimes with the way he moves his body when he throws, he's making himself 6 foot.
He drops his shoulder down and he's throwing more side-armed as opposed to throwing it over the top.
Yes, and he had said in the spring, he was like, and I don't know if he was saying that Taylor was trying to do this, but he was saying some of these like quarterback guru coaches or whatever, or people online or whatever, everybody thinks they're trying to coach Patrick Mahomes, who can do stuff like that and make the craziest plays you've ever seen. Taylor Green isn't Patrick Mahomes, and he doesn't need to be. He's a totally different player. He's built totally different, and that's something that Petrino said. And he was like, if he can just get up over the top, he can complete everything, so that's something that they've been working on, and he talked about that again, and somebody asked him, is there a certain accuracy percentage that you've set as a goal for him, and he said, not necessarily. I don't think Bobby Petrino is a huge numbers guy, so I think that's the biggest thing, and I think that's the number one question for this offense going into the season is Taylor Green going to have made those strides that they need him to make?
You mentioned the Mahomes angle with Green. It's interesting how the best quarterbacks in the NFL, they have such an impact on how players grow up learning how to play the position. Like Brett Favre, when he was with the Packers, part of what made him so much fun to watch was just how unpredictable of a quarterback he was. Well, then you get Tony Romo, who grows up in Wisconsin, and he watches that, and then he comes into the NFL, and he does some of the same things. And I'm sure I see this even in 7th grade football games, Christina. So, I mean, some of the Mahomes-type throws that quarterbacks are trying to make. And so there's obviously an influence there. But at the same time, not everybody can be Mahomes. Not everybody can be
I mean,
Romo
I don't blame them for
Favre.
wanting to be. He looks awesome.
And when it works, it looks great.
Yeah.
But there's also a great risk to playing, that way sometimes.
Yeah, there totally is, and we see that a lot with I think maybe that was some of the problem last season. Not necessarily trying to emulate Patrick Mahomes, but trying to get players to do things that do not suit their skills. And I don't, no one's telling. I doubt that Taylor's coaches at Boise State told him try to be like Patrick Mahomes or anything. But it's like if that's something you set for yourself, or if that's something you're trying to emulate, and it just doesn't match up with the tools that you naturally have or the things that you are already good at, then you're forcing it, and we see that. We saw that with last year's team. Maybe some of the things that didn't quite fit skill sets and how it doesn't go well. It's especially at the college level. You can't force. It's harder to force players into a system or a style or whatever that doesn't suit their natural abilities or suit what they're used to.
You can get the latest from Christina, all of her football coverage at wholehogsports.com. Analysis laced in recruiting from Richard Davenport. Unique stories on all your favorite teams. Subscribe today at wholehogsports.com. Do you want to talk about Saracen and Oakland?
Sure. You definitely know more about it than I do.
Well, it's you and I were talking about this on the phone yesterday. I said, I feel like I know more about gaming regulations and just how it all works in the state of Arkansas. I know about 400% more than I did 2 days ago, because we've really had to go familiarize ourselves with a lot of this. And if you missed it yesterday, Mike Wickline has a great story on our website at Whole Hog Sports. If you click on the latest tab at the top of the page, you'll see it on that first page. But he really went into detail everything that's happening in this Saracen dispute. And I hate, I guess it's easy to frame it as Saracen versus Oakland, but really what it is that Saracen is using, and this is my opinion here, they're using NIL as a means to drum up public support for an expansion, a greater expansion to online gaming. So, another way to say that is that, they're trying to get support from Razorback fans saying, hey, we will help the Razorbacks, but in return, we want an expansion to online gaming. Oakland opposes it. I'm sure there are many people other than Oakland who oppose this. And, someone on our message board made a point yesterday. They said, well, do you think this would happen in Texas or Tennessee or Alabama? They would just push this through. And I said, no. I mean, I think in any state, any type of expansion to online gaming is going to get highly scrutinized, and it's going to get scrutinized even more so in states where you have a very conservative block of voters. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that there's a pushback to this. That's not to say that it may go through eventually, but I do think that people have to take their Razorback goggles off when they are evaluating this and take a step back and say, hey, how is this going to affect the public at large? The Oaklawn owner wrote an open letter yesterday that David Bazzel actually shared on social media, and I'm sure you read that too. And in it, he said, we would profit from this. We would, benefit from this, but I don't believe it's best for the people of Arkansas. And so it's I guess it's kind of something that's kind of delicate to discuss because, yes, it could help the Razorbacks, but you have to look at what it would do societally and, to the public at large.
Yeah. And I guess, and this is a genuine question for you because I'm not a gambler.
Nor am I.
Yeah. And I don't have.
Does that surprise you?
Not at all, actually. So yeah, I guess a genuine question for you is, what is for the people that do oppose it, what is the concern about what it would do societally? I don't know.
The ease
Okay.
to which you would have gaming. So right
Okay.
now, you in order to do some of these things that I think Saracen wants to be made legal on your smartphone, you've got to make a conscious decision to get in your car and drive to
Right.
Pine Bluff or
Right.
drive to Hot Springs or drive to West Memphis and do this in person. If this goes through, there would be a greater ease to do
That makes
that
sense,
from home.
And people are concerned about like gambling problems
Yes.
and things like that. That makes
Yes.
sense. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't have an opinion on it. I'm not a gambler. I don't, but it's been really interesting to track, and it's been interesting to see how this sort of greater, this state and sort of political issue is being tied to this, sports aspect. And I think one thing that's getting lost is with the donation that Oaklawn made to the foundation. I think one thing that people are forgetting or maybe never knew is that that's not an NIL donation.
It's a Razorback Foundation donation.
And those are different things. And I think, and that was, when I interviewed the now former executive director of Arkansas Edge, the collective, over the summer, or maybe it was in the spring. And he said one of the biggest battles they're fighting with, launching and public perception is helping people understand that they are not the foundation. And the foundation, they do not share money. They can't. What doesn't help them is their office is in the foundation building.
Right.
They rent a space from the
Right.
foundation. So that doesn't really help
Yep.
their cause there. But the money that Oaklawn gave was to the foundation. That is not money that is being doled out to players in NIL deals.
I made this point yesterday to somebody. I feel like NIL has really clouded the fact that the scholarship fund donation, not the one that Oaklawn made, but I'm talking about all of the money that does come into the Razorback Foundation, how integral that is to an athletics department putting together their annual budget. I mean, right? I mean, it's a significant piece of that $173 million that Arkansas is going to have to spend this year. And I think it's going to be even more important moving forward because of this House settlement. And people who listen to us daily probably roll their eyes. Here he goes again on the House settlement. But it's such a big deal because they've got to figure out a way to share $21.5 million in revenue with athletes, plus fund new scholarships for basically every sport. I think it's probably going to get a bump in scholarships. Don't know how much it's going to be per sport, but the estimates say somewhere around $3 to $7 million per year. So you're looking at $21.5 million a year in revenue sharing, plus on the conservative end, $3 million more in scholarship spending, maybe 2 times that much, somewhere $25 million or more in new expenses. And so the funds to the Razorback Foundation are going to be extremely important, especially, and as you relate it to NIL, we don't know what NIL is going to look like next year because we haven't quite got a feel for how the House settlement is going to affect it. But we know that the House settlement, one of the objectives of it is to rein in the collectives.
Right. And I think, it's going to, and one thing Matt Brown said on the show yesterday was, it's not a foregone conclusion that it will pass the way it's proposed right now. But if it is, it would fundamentally change how collectives operate. And if they, if they're going to continue to operate, they will have to change their expenses a little bit. Their operations a little bit and what their mission is. It won't be what it is now with facilitating deals.
Hunter Yurchek told the other day, he told the trustees discussed these the other day. He said, I've got to find levers to significantly increase revenues and decrease expenses. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that works out. Christina, we appreciate you being here. Anthony Kristensen will be on here in just a moment. We'll talk Razorback basketball with him, a couple of Razorback basketball items from yesterday. But first, a word from Kendall King.
At Kendall King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kendall King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kendall King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Welcome back in. Anthony Kristensen with us. A couple of Razorback basketball items of note from yesterday. Arkansas has scheduled a game with Arkansas Little Rock. We had heard that was coming, but it's now official as UALR announced its schedule. That game will be played November 22nd at Bud Walton Arena. And then also the Razorbacks, they've sold out of season tickets, which that doesn't surprise anyone. But we'll get into that here with Anthony. First, I want to tell you about Hawgs Illustrated. You can stay on top of all the Razorback sports with a digital subscription to the Hawgs Illustrated app. Get the most complete Razorback coverage. The subscription will give you 20-plus issues of our magazine. It includes access to all of our content at wholehogsports.com. Monthly subscriptions begin at $17. You can join now at hogsillustrated.com/subscribe or call 479-684-5509. All right, Anthony, let's start with UALR. Coached by Darrell Walker, 1983 All-American at Arkansas. Darrell loves the Razorbacks. I mean, and what really puts him in kind of a unique situation here is that, you know, he's the head coach at a school in the state, yet it seems like what a lot of people want to talk to him about is the Razorbacks, just because he's got the affiliation with it. And, I mean, he doesn't make any bones. He wants to beat Arkansas on November 22nd, but he wants Arkansas to go 30-1 during the regular season. 31-0 if they beat Little Rock, which they probably should. You were taken aback, though, and this was kind of funny, I thought, yesterday. Just a little bit about Anthony's background. He's from St. Louis, grew up in the Midwest. Probably you focused on nothing but Midwest sports, I would assume, right, growing up?
Pretty much that and European soccer.
So as he was writing this story yesterday, he sent me a text. He said, is this right that Arkansas and Little Rock have only played one time? It's like, yeah, they've only played one time. They played in 2021. Arkansas beat them 93-78 at Bud Walton. Of course, they played the exhibition game prior to the 1920 season when the floor was named for Nolan Richardson. That was the first ever Razorback contest that Eric Musselman coached. But you knew nothing about the scheduling ban with in-state teams, right?
That is correct, yes.
Of course, that's been lifted now for about 5 or 6 years. But, it's just the second time that Arkansas and Little Rock have played. I'm sure there have been discussions with Musselman and Walker about playing in other seasons, but it's hard to get games scheduled and, to make it work out where, yeah, we can do this or no, we can't. And I feel like under Musselman, Arkansas really scheduled kind of late. Like Calipari's made the comment that when he came in, I had no team, I had no schedule. And, so he's really had to build it from scratch. What do you know about Little Rock? We know they won the Ohio Valley last year. What else do you know about them?
Yeah, I mean, and not only did they win the Ohio Valley regular season last year, they made the conference championship game where they lost to Morehead State. And Morehead State's coach, Josh Bradlin, or Preston Spradlin, excuse me, goodness, Josh. He's now gone off to James Madison. But I think this is a Little Rock team that should, again, compete for the OVC title, having come from covering the Ohio Valley and the Missouri Valley, my time in Evansville. I mean, this is a team that I got pretty familiar with. Darrell coaches them very well. Got K.K. Robinson definitely coming back. Mikkel Mitchell, I believe, waiting to hear back on a waiver. And then you've got a couple of big-time transfers coming in. Jonathan Lawson, obviously, coming in from Memphis, and then Milani.
That's the brother of Chandler.
Yes. And then Milani Wilkinson coming in from LSU. And they did lose a lot, not to I guess praise them too much. Obviously, Jalen Crocker Johnson was OVC Freshman of the Year last year. He went to Colorado State. Really, really good player. I think he's going to be a good Mountain West player for the Rams. And DeAnthony Gordon and Jameer Chaplin, both big-time contributors to that team, both heading to Southern Miss. So, I mean, they lost a lot, but they also went into the portal, got some good freshmen as well coming in, and kind of replaced those guys. So I think this is a team that should be, right around the top of the Ohio Valley again.
Mikel Mitchell, you touched on that. So basically what's going on with him is that he's looking for a 6th year of eligibility. I don't know if he'll end up getting it, but as of right now, he's listed on Little Rock's online roster, and so there is a potential that he could be playing in that game. Of course, he spent a season at Arkansas, also played at Rhode Island, played at Maryland. His brother Mackay played for the Razorbacks for a couple of seasons, so there may be a couple of former Razorbacks playing in that game for the Trojans. We'll see how things work out for Mikel Mitchell. It seems unlikely that he would get another year of eligibility, but I don't know his situation well enough. And, I mean, nothing really surprises me anymore. The Razorbacks have a baseball player who's transferring out of here right now who I think would be eligible for a 7th season of college baseball due to injuries and redshirting and things like that. He was born in 1999 and, is still playing college sports. So, nothing would really surprise me as it relates to the Mitchell situation.
Yeah, no.
Season tickets have sold out at Bud Walton Arena. It's the 4th consecutive season that this has happened. It's happened every year since the arena was able to be full again. There was the shutdown, and then the next year there were the restrictions where only 4,400 people could be at the games. And then after that, of course, Arkansas made the first Elite 8 run that season. And since then, the tickets have sold every year. Tickets are sold out again for this one. Now, one thing that I think can maybe confuse people a little bit is that even though season tickets have been sold, it doesn't mean all 19,200 seats in the arena have been sold. I wrote on this a few years ago that the season ticket packages, and I'm sure the number probably varies a little bit from year to year, but like in 2021, for example, the 21-22 season, when they announced a sellout, that meant that they had sold 14,533 season tickets. There are a lot of tickets that are held for students, for official party, for, various other reasons. And so, yes, tickets have been sold out, and I expect it to be very hard to get into Bud Walton Arena this year. But it's not a hard 19,200 sellout yet. I expect it to be. I figure student tickets will be very difficult to get this year as well. But, this really wasn't expected. I thought back to 2 things, Anthony. You remember the night that Calipari was introduced at Bud Walton Arena?
Oh, yeah.
You remember he looked at Hunter Yurachek and said, "I don't have to sell tickets, do I?" No.
Yeah.
No,
he does not.
Yeah, the name and the excitement about Razorback basketball just kind of sells itself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is, one of the most exciting times, at least, in my short career of covering things that, I've gotten to see. Obviously, John Calipari comes in and, he brings in name recognition. He's brought in a good, talented team as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be excited for this team.
One more thing to mention is that Bob Holt of the Democrat Gazette spoke to Darrell Walker last night, and Darrell told him that this game with Arkansas is part of a multi-team event with Illinois and Maryland Eastern Shore. We already know Arkansas is playing Illinois on Thanksgiving Day in Kansas City. The Maryland Eastern Shore part is newsworthy. So basically, expect Arkansas and Maryland Eastern Shore to have a game announced at Bud Walton Arena, probably in fairly short order, because it's part of that multi-team event between those teams. Razorbacks still putting their schedule together. They're about halfway there, but I think we should probably know what the non-conference is going to look like within a few weeks, I think, usually September.
I would definitely think so. Maryland Eastern Shore, that should be a game they would win. I mean, Maryland Eastern Shore had 11 open scholarship spots or roster spots. I can't remember exactly if they're one of the schools that doesn't offer scholarships. But they had 11 open roster spots as of June 5th. Filled a lot of those with JUCO guys or guys who were just kind of stranded in the portal. Guys who have some talent, too. Trey Hall, coming from Utah Tech, played at Evansville before he went to Utah Tech, so I know him a little bit. He's a good player, good size, can shoot. I mean, so they brought in some good guys. First-year coach in there as well. So it's a rebuilding Maryland Eastern Shore team, but a lot of work to be done, especially when your coach gets hired on June 1st and you have 11 open spots in June.
Anthony, we appreciate it. Anthony's going to be at the Razorback soccer game tonight covering that. You can read his coverage on our website. Also, we mentioned the Hawgs Illustrated. We're in the early stages right now putting together our basketball preview that we'll have out to you here within a couple of months. So if you want to be on the lookout for that, if you want to be a subscriber and get ready for that, again, it's hogsillustrated.com/subscribe or call 479-684-5509. Anthony, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
We'll be back with David Bazzel in just a moment. We'll talk to David about the Little Rock Touchdown Club lineup, also about the Razorbacks, maybe about this casino situation in Arkansas. But first, a word from Kendall King.
At Kindle King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Welcome back. Serving its community since 1971, Bentonville Glass is committed, professional, and versatile. If you're looking for a quality leader in Northwest Arkansas or looking for skilled craftsmanship, look no further than Bentonville Glass for all of your glass market needs with the highest quality products. You can find them in Bentonville at 507 South Main or online at bentonvilleglass.com. We're joined now by David Bazzel. David, I don't even know what your title is. You do so much, but you know who he is. He played for the Razorbacks in the 80s. Runs the Little Rock Touchdown Club. You can hear him on the Buzz radio station down in Little Rock. And I could probably keep going, David, but we'll stop right there. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, no need, Matt. Thanks. Great to be here.
Hey, I want to talk to you first about Little Rock Touchdown Club. You announced your lineup last week. This is 20 years, right, of Little Rock Touchdown Club?
Yeah.
2004 is when you launched?
Yeah.
How did it come about, and how has it grown? Could you ever have imagined what it became?
You know, not to where we got now. I mean, I always had a feeling that we could be successful. I sort of downplayed that early, but that's why I thought the timing was right, Matt. Central Arkansas, you know, we don't have a football team. You got UCA 30 minutes from Little Rock, and at UAPB, and you got Arkansas State and Fayetteville, obviously 3 hours away. And growing up in the South down in Florida, you know, I was very familiar with the Birmingham Touchdown Club, the Atlanta Touchdown Club, Mobile Touchdown Club, all those things. And I thought Little Rock could work. And so, but I'll tell you, the last 10 years, this way this thing has taken off, and it takes a lot of great sponsors paying, you know, big money. I'll tell you, Matt, when I first started doing this, if I paid somebody, it was $1,000, $1,500, you know, maybe $2,500 those first few years of doing it to come to Little Rock. And now I've got multiple speakers that are $25,000, $30,000 per speaker, plus having to get private jets. And so it takes a village to do it. It takes a lot of sponsors. The other thing too, Matt, that's successful for our group is we have attendance. We have great attendance. Like my friends over in Memphis at the Memphis Touchdown Club, they always like, how are you getting all these people to come? Mm-hmm. It's become a thing to do on Mondays, almost like a community thing, to where you show up, you see the governor there, you may see Warren Stevens or George Mackers from Simmons, or you may see somebody making the minimum wage or who's retired. It's just really become a very social thing, the place to be. And I didn't see that happening. I didn't see where, but if you start getting enough compelling speakers there, people will come, and they certainly are.
I'm going to run through your lineup here real quick, David. It's pretty impressive. You start with Sam Pittman, then Brett Favre, Ray Lewis, Eric Dickerson, Hunter Yurachek. You got Jimbo Fisher to come there. I want to ask you about how you got Jimbo, by the way. Greg McElroy, Dan Mullen, Nathan Brown, the head coach at UCA. You've got on Halloween, you've got DJ Williams, Jarius Wright, and Joe Adams there all together. Then Butch Jones of Arkansas State, Colt McCoy, another luncheon with 3 in November with Barry Switzer, Ken Hatfield, and Freddie Marshall. And then you finish up with Jordan Rogers and David Pollock. It's a great list. Jimbo, how did you get him?
Well, you know, it's interesting. If you remember, Matt, 2 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be able to get John Gruden and Ed Orgeron on the same year. And what I remember, I knew when I got those guys, and, you know, I ended up getting John Gruden through John Daly and Ed Orgeron, I know for a lot of years. But we were fortunate to be the first people to actually do a public event with those guys since they've been fired. So I knew that if they said anything interesting, it would probably go viral, and that's exactly what happened. They had Orgeron, they're going to pay me $17 million. What door, what time do I need to walk out? That was a big thing. And then Gruden talking about I'm a good person and, I want to get back into coaching, and that went viral too. And I think we had this similar situation with Jimbo. I don't think he's done a lot of interviews, and we may be one of the first that he does. I think he's probably has been satisfied just stepping out of the public, light since he was let go at A&M. And of course, one of the things that's been able to make these lineups work over the years is my time as a player, the Broyles Award, all those things sort of go hand in hand. For example, Jimbo Fisher, I don't know if you remember this, Matt, but he actually was a Broyles Award finalist when he was the offensive coordinator under Nick Saban at LSU. So that's how far we go back. And so I have a little bit of credibility when I reach out. I played for Lou Holtzkin, Hatfield, a team captain. I do the Broyles Award. And so a lot of the guys like that know that I'm not scamming them. I'm not coming in there trying to do a gotcha thing. That they know they're going to be treated with respect. And I tracked him down. Obviously, we know some coaches that know him. And usually if I call an AD, an athletic director, or a communications guy, and just say, hey, listen, this is David Bazzel with the Broyles Award, they'll just say, I'm trying to reach coach. They'll usually help with that kind of deal.
Who's your favorite guest you've had?
Well, Ditka was off the chart. It's so iconic. Terry Bradshaw was so good. Peyton Manning last year. The Mannings, I tell you, Peyton, Eli, and Archie were all just spectacular. Vernon Lundquist was great. There's so many. Orgeron was great. Marty Smith. I mean, it could go on. There's so many. Laura Rutledge, but the icons like Mean Joe Green, loved him. Larry Zonka, Earl Campbell. I mean, the greatest names. And then you mentioned three here. Favre, Lewis, and Dickerson are all Gold Jacket guys, Matt. Not only are they all Gold Jacket Hall of Famers, but when the NFL came out with their 100-year team, which was the 100-year history of the NFL, it was in 2019. There's six players for each position over that 100 years. And all three of these guys were one of the six. So one of the six greatest quarterbacks, one of the six greatest linebackers, and one of the six greatest running backs. A lot of people were surprised that Dickerson was on that list. I think we forget about him, but it's just fortunate we have great guests. And the thing you talked about, the whole list, I think you look at last year or a couple years ago, Tim Brando was deep in the list, but he was magnificent. I think that's one great thing about this. Got Barry Switzer coming back, or Colt McCoy. The fact that Colt McCoy played against Greg McElroy in the national championship game. Remember, got knocked out. All the Texas folks wonder what if. I just think there's storylines in all these guys to where if you come on Monday, you're going to find something interesting to hear. And so, listen, I'm just glad we got it going. It's a haul to get to the finish line with 15. We're the only club in America that does 15 straight meetings.
When do you start putting these together?
I started late this year. I usually start around March. Okay. But I got started way late. I only got started 2-3 months ago, and I was really stressing to try to get it done. But thank God it all came together, and I think everybody's excited. And I'm sure especially, and of course, the other thing too, and the other thing what's amazing, Matt, is that we've been able to grow this thing. I think Paul Feinbaum said it best. This is the best new touchdown club. This is the best touchdown club in America, which is high praise. We've done this while the flagship football program in the state has been struggling. I mean, you can imagine what kind of turnout we would have if we were playing for conference championships or winning 8-10 games every year. And so we've been through a rough patch, obviously, the last 10 years, and that certainly has not helped us, but it just shows that our club will get together regardless.
That's a good segue. David, what do you think about this year's team?
It's an interesting deal because, you're up there and you're around it more than I am. And so I haven't had a chance, I've been at much spring practice, and you don't get a chance to watch much during the warm-up sessions, the fastball, whatever they are. So you really don't know. I saw last year, Matt, I watched the offensive line in, it might've been 2 days in spring, and I knew we had a problem. I knew we had a problem. And voice as much on the air. This year, with those three transfers for, Tennessee, San Jose State, Michigan State, I think we're better. I just can't tell yet because I haven't had enough film and eyeball, coverage to see how much better they're going to be. But I do know this is I think you've upgraded at quarterback. think you've upgraded at running back, or not upgraded, at least you're equal to or better than what you had last year. You got a tight end that was very productive. He's back. And so all your receivers are back, and then you throw in Bobby Petrino. So I remember going into last year, and I said it on Channel 7, Matt. I said, what concerns me is that we've got a player that's got a new offensive coordinator that's changed up this offense and what this player is used to playing, and I'm not so sure it's going to work, and it didn't. You know what we are coming into this year. You know we're going to be better offensively because of Petrino. The question is, how good is that offensive line? How much improvement are they going to make with those 3 transfer guys? And then on the defensive side, again, think we're going to be better, but you got a bunch of new faces at linebacker. These defensive linemen that we've had forever, can they step up and really be impactful? They haven't been as impactful as they should be. And so all that to say this, I'm not sure, Matt. I mean, I'm really not sure how, what we're going to be. I think we're going to be better, but with the schedule that we have, I don't know how much, the word better is going to equate to.
And that's the deal, is that all of the teams get better, right? I mean, during the off season, or at least most of them do. David, I wrote something yesterday for something that hasn't come out yet, but yeah, I wrote in it, I said, I think the hope last year was that the offense would be better. This year, the expectation is that the offense will be better.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's true. Again, it was a calculated move at the time. Obviously Sam lost Bryles or decided to move on. Mm-hmm. And on paper, bring in Enos. And I think part of the way you kept KJ Jefferson on campus, Matt, was, hey, we're going to bring in a guy that knows how to get you ready for the NFL. But you changed the stripes on him. I said he was born with stripes, and now he doesn't have them. It was not the kind of offense that worked, and then you couldn't pass protect, in a pro drop back kind of situation. Mm-hmm. But you're right. This year, we know what the identity is going to be, even though Bobby talked about still formulating his identity for this offense. I'm a big believer in that as a former player. Every team unit has a different, identity. And so is this team going to be more running than we think, or this team going to light it up with, with Green's arm? But they are going to be better. I think it's going to be more fun to watch. We know what we're dealing with. And man, you talking about if you're a fan and you want to see great schedule, you got it this year.
2 weeks from tonight, the season starts down at War Memorial Stadium there in Little Rock, David. There's 2 games left on the War Memorial contract. What is the temperature, do you think, to keep games there past Arkansas State next season?
I don't know, Matt. I'm a guy who played, I used to play 4 games a year down here, and it didn't even have lights in Fayetteville. And I know the history of Little Rock, and I'm a little worried about this first game as far as attendance. You got a Thursday night game. People can't get off work and tailgate.
It'll be in the 30,000s.
Yeah. What's that?
It'll be in the 30,000s.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And so you keep putting that kind of result out there. But again, I think with Arkansas State, that will be a different story next year. I think it'll be a better crowd. I think nothing against UAPB. The teams that we've played there over the last 10 years have not been the most attractive. And listen, I get it. I get the whole theory about going up there and keeping all the games in Fayetteville, and I'm good with that if that's what it is. I just do think there is some value in showing up in Central Arkansas every once in a while because, again, you're finding less and less loyalty with these players around the state because it's about NIL. And so the less you come down here, the less exposure maybe players get to maybe going to a game or going to a game. So I get all the arguments, but as an old guy, who played there, I know what that stadium can be like, but it just hasn't reached those levels in attendance and pizzazz, if you will, the last, decade.
I stayed the night in Little Rock before last year's game against Western Carolina. I stayed downtown, drove down Cantrell, cut down through Kavanaugh to the stadium. And there was a sense of nostalgia as I was driving through there. Yeah. You see people coming out of their houses and you think, hey, these people have probably been doing this for 40, 50 years. You got grandfathers who are taking their grandkids who probably went to the game with their granddads. I mean, there's a deep nostalgia and there's a deep feel there. I just don't know that I feel that there's a momentum to keep games in Little Rock, maybe like I felt the past several times that the contract has come up.
Yeah, I think that's true. And you think about it, I mean, you've got an unbelievable stadium up there. You make more money. And so I get all the arguments. I think for years, Matt, the reason you came down here were to make sure there were a lot of donors down here that had supported this program when nobody was up in Northwest Arkansas, and they felt that there was some needed to be loyal to that group down here and to continue to get those donations. I feel that that's not an important factor in this anymore. From a marketing standpoint, you've already heard what Coach Cal said, Matt. He wants to take his team around the state, and that's sort of my theory. A little bit easier in basketball than you can in football, but I love being a player and going on the road, even though it was a little inconvenient because I knew that there would be a certain part of the state that would not ever be able to get up and see me play in Fayetteville. But I understand the dollars and cents part of it. I understand the restrictions on recruiting, and so I'm prepared to where if it does go away. But I'll be anxious to see what happens next year with that Arkansas State game. Maybe that can be some magic that could be a somewhat regular, a matchup that could work there. I don't know, but I'm with you. There's some great history, as you mentioned, Markham. I didn't grow up here, but even being a player and driving down Markham and being packed with fans of the sidewalks, and you're right, parking in all those houses, those yards of all the houses north of the stadium. A lot of great history.
Yeah, and if you play Florida A&M, you play Alcorn State, you play UAPB, Western Carolina, you play any of those teams in Fayetteville, it's going to be a fairly empty stadium too.
Yeah,
that's
a great point.
It just comes down to whether or not do you want to keep going down to Little Rock and doing that. And I'm glad I'm not making that decision, David. I know that. Hey, I know this is kind of a sensitive topic for you, but I want to ask you about what's going on with Saracen and Oaklawn. And just full disclosure, David does commercial advertising for Oaklawn, but I know on your show you've got Saracen commercials on your morning show. You said that you spoke to the leadership of both of these casinos last night. What were those conversations like, and is this being overblown?
Well, in most things in life, there's more details than you probably know when you hear a story like this. I think for this situation, it is. And as you mentioned, both Oaklawn and Saracen are advertisers on our station. We appreciate them both. Of course, our relationship with Oaklawn goes back 25 years. And so we have a long history with them. And what Saracen has been able to accomplish in a short time is impressive as well. My main thing, this whole conversation was about NIL. Remember, that's sort of what this came about. And so the question is, how do you get to the finish line in raising money for NIL? And that's where everything goes off the rails because there's disagreement. There's emotion in it. But when you have disagreement with two, big players like that, my problem with it is that I hate to see it happen in public. That's my only thing, Matt. Hey, listen, Oaklawn is a business. They got to run the business the way they see it needs to be run, and Saracen has to do that. And so, there's a fine line between, we got to do this for NIL, but also we got to run our business the way we need to run our business. We're not in this thing. We didn't open this business so we could make sure and take care of NIL. And so the only thing that's disappointing to me is that it's become such a public deal. That's the disappointing thing, because nothing good comes out of this, back and forth publicly. And so I just hope that you get to the finish line figuring out the best ways to do this, that the law allows, and that if you don't like the way the laws are, you change them, and you don't have to rush through it. That, I know there's an urgency to get this NIL money, but it just needs to be done the right way. And I just, one of the things I said last night on my tweet was that, hey, listen, this state is too small to be bickering when, let's come together, let's figure out a way to get this thing done instead of accusing. And of course, I know both sides, are going back and forth on that. I'm just disappointed to see that we've gotten to the point where that level of disagreement is coming out and spilled out in public, when the real goal should be, let's just figure out a way where we can make this thing work and try to help not only U of A NIL, but all the schools that need it.
One of the things that I hope people understand, David, and that I hope I'm helping people understand, I'm certainly trying to do my part, is that this is not just about NIL. This is part of a much larger policy matter that is that goes way beyond sports. If it was just NIL, if Saracen was just proposing an NIL package, I don't know that they would be getting the pushback from Hot Springs that they're getting right now. But this is about more than just Razorback NIL. NIL, the Razorbacks, the foundation, it's all kind of being dangled as a carrot in the middle, right?
Right. That's right. And that was my point, is I wish we could make this be. And of course, one side's argument said you have to have some of that involved. The other side is that you don't have to have it. And that's why I just hate this is being played out in public. But yeah, but that was sort of my whole point. Let's get back to the NIL, how we make it work, because you're right. There are other policy issues here that are in the state and that are formed in a person's right to have their business and decide what they want to do. And I mean, it's a fascinating thing to me. I don't like it. It is fascinating how you look at, two different people looking at the same thing and seeing different ways to approach it. But it's hard enough for Arkansas to compete with the Alabamas and the Texases of the world. And besides, tearing down each other and try, as we try to get to the finish line. But you're right. It's a good analysis, basically, of what you just said. And I like the idea. Listen, if a 50-50 rival can do it, hey, I'm game to do it. It's just the question is, how do you get there? And I think that's where this whole debate goes.
Yeah, that's where the standoff is right now. He's David Bazzel. He is the creator, founder of the Little Rock Touchdown Club, and that gets kicked off next Monday down in Little Rock. David, we appreciate you being here.
Matt, always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you on Saturdays, man.
All right, appreciate it, David. And we appreciate you being on our show today. Thank you to Christina Long, Anthony Kristensen for being in studio, Spencer Tyree, Blake Sutton working back in the back. We've got a fun show lined up for you tomorrow. Phil Steele, college football preseason magazine guru, will be on the show. Also, Dave Van Horn, the Razorback baseball coach, tomorrow. So we hope you'll see you then. And until then, hope you'll join our website at wholehogsports.com. Have a great day, everyone.